Left jab, uppercut, leave you laid out on the floor. Try to duck and roll, hit and miss, now you counting stars. Should've practiced more, should've hit the mask, get out there more. Claim that you're the best, you gotta show me, son. Actions over words, baby boy, is you real or what? Talking way too much, world come. Back sports, talking way too much, world come. Back sports, talking way too much, world come. Back sports,
Yo, what's good? Shout out to the hottest chat in the MF game, A-Side official. Negotiation needed, period. You already know, Big Blunts and Boxing back in the building. Appreciate everyone who support the channel. And those of you who've been following me for a minute, you know the topic. I've spoken on it before. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to BG. I've spoken on it before. But, on the eve of this fight that's coming up this weekend, I just wanted to touch bases on something that the ones that been following me since day one understands. As you all know, I had a son that passed, right? And, the way it all went down was like, I had to spare the moment when I was supposed to go pick him up down from visiting his grandmother's, which I didn't want really for him to visit, at the time, because that was my first son. I just wanted to, embrace him myself, first time father and all that. So therefore, when I was actually getting my car tuned up and everything at my first duty station, low in rank, very minimal money, finances and everything. I'm getting ready to drive down there from DC to the A. And, this white dude that worked at Pep Boys came in there and told me, asked me if my name's Scotty. And I said, yeah. So I went on the phone and, I was told that my, son had passed away, right? So that happened several years ago. You know what I'm saying? When I was younger, but as of late, I've been thinking about not only just my son, but my other oldest son and my youngest son. The reason being is that when, vets go through situations with PTSD and everything else, the attachments come with it. And I've been thinking about, um, the time I spent with my oldest, how he looked after I fed him, how his belly, he was still there with a smile, and how his belly looked and all that when he was full. And, I only asked God for one. I said, give me one son. And he gave me that. And I cherished him too. You know what I'm saying? That's the first time, every time I ever been on WIC. I didn't think you could be in the military and get on WIC, but I ended up getting on WIC and pretty much handling that father duty by myself. But I'm be honest, as of late, I've been going through a state of depression the last several months, thinking about, what it would be for my oldest son to be here, spend time with him, how I used to put him in the car seat and everything. And, it was something I spoke over with my mom. And, I told her, I said, hey, I've been thinking about the kids. And the reason why I think it's heavy, because when you think about other things that you go through in the military, in combat, right? You look at how you signed up for the mission. You didn't sign up for a family, you signed up for the mission, right? You go in there for the mission, all you know is the mission. If you don't get the mission accomplished, it'll affect your performance value as a Marine. Marine, we was taught to suck everything up and go about our duties. If you can't go about your duties during adversity, then you're not a leader. I pretty much did that. It's a lot of things that I swiped to the side. It's a lot of things that I just attempt to put away and step over them like they wasn't nothing, right? And like I said, there's certain people that's on here heard me talk about this, how the Marine Corps said if they wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one. But I just look at how it's good to have served. It is. But really, you find out that when it comes down to it, no one really understands the severity of sacrifice that you have to go through. Not just with the service aspect of it, but with the family destruction. You know, you can go on deployments for 5 to 6 months. When you come back, I guarantee you, your kids are going to act different. Your kids are going to grow up on you. And this not just one deployment. We're talking about doing your time, especially when you're picking up rank. You really don't have a say so on where you're going, if you're going, and do you have the authority to determine should you be going. You're pretty much going to be on that deployment. And then, you know, you have to say goodbye to everybody and everything. And if you got some kids on deck, then you just have to, you know, wish the best, keep faith in God, and go on this deployment and accomplish the mission. But during that time, you know, serving 20 years, that shit break your family down. It do. And I remember when my son passed, right? I remember going to a very organization that they had us donate money to. And I remember being broke and asking them for money for a funeral because I didn't even know what life insurance was. And I remember them giving me a hard time. And luckily I had a staff NCO with me that told me, that looked at me, and I thought he was looking at me because, yeah, you know, you're getting the hard truth right now. He looked at me, he said, you know what, step outside for a minute. He went in there and chewed that person out that was giving me a hard time, because this was an organization, I'm not gonna mention their name, that veterans was always told to donate to, even in boot camp. Donate to this organization. They're part of the, you know, this service right here. And whenever you in need, you go to them. Come to find out, the real ones, I don't know if y'all, you know, ever had a hardship or whatever and got in the service. Remember Red Cross. Shout out to the Red Cross. The Red Cross helped me out tremendously because I didn't know what to pay for a funeral. I didn't know what a memorial service was. I didn't know what a plot. I didn't know any of that when my son passed. I didn't know any of that. I learned that on the fly. And I'm going to tell you, the only organization that was there keeping in touch and making sure I knew what was going on was the Red Cross. That's no cap. The Red Cross, I respect them so much for helping me out back then. But I guess, you know, the reality when you retire and everything, and you know, and sit up here and cross them T's, lace them boots, went from duty station to duty station. You happy to get to that point where you can say, yeah, I'm retired and I'm going to get benefits, right? But the reality of what you're going to experience when it comes to your mental health, they always used to tell me before I even got out the service. They say, if you go back home, your people ain't going to understand what you've been through because they wasn't there with you. They didn't travel with you or none of that. But most of all, you have to understand you're going to go through some situations where people are going to look at you different just because you went through all these places, you're experiencing all this shit. And the severity of it, you can go to the Veterans Affairs all day long, but ultimately you still have to deal with it on your own. You have to deal with the silence. You have to deal with when you start remembering those moments and having a conversation with your kids. You keep on thinking, what if you wouldn't have went in this place? What if you would have went at this time? Could you have bonded better with your family? And I'm gonna keep it a hundo. You know, you get to a point where you say, man, I wish I could have had kids back to back, back to back, back to back. You know, you hear about people that have multiple kids. I mean, because they always say one of them going to be there for you when it's time for you to go to hospice care. You know what I'm saying? You had like 10, 12 kids. One of them gonna be there. But I only had kids out of my marriages. But I look at it now and I say, I've been wanting to move um, relocate my son down here to the A because he was buried somewhere else. And I just been thinking about the day I buried him, how bad it was raining. And, I was thinking to myself, as young as I was like, man, you put that casket in the ground, it's just gonna flood it out. And I remember that little casket, because September was the month he passed, man. You know what I'm saying? And I just remember getting ready to want to go down there and take that drive and be peaceful, knowing I'm going down to pick little man up, bring him back, and then put him back on the schedule. But unfortunately, it never went down like that. What makes it even worse, real talk, I reflect on this super heavy because this is a visual that I can't get out of my mind. It's the fact that when I finally got down there, and my pop's gone right now. He passed years ago. But I remember my pops when I got on the phone and I was trying to call and see what went on because I didn't know if he had been hurt in an accident. I didn't know if he choked on something. I didn't know the circumstances for his death, right? But coming up in a very strict household in the South, I'm talking about super strict. Um, I asked pops, I say, "Hey, what happened?" He said, "Your son dead." See, the reason why he answered the way he did because he's always been that way. You know what I'm saying? He's always been. I don't know. It's supposed to be some type of structure with religion and all that. Always straight to the point, sharp, a bit caustic, right? But he said your son dead, right? And I said, why would you say that? Because initially I had my son. I wasn't planning on getting married to anything. I was just taking care of my kid. He told my son was dead. And he just got off the phone. So I said, oh, okay, I guess that's his way of getting back at me. That was the first grandkid, right? And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want him to go down there because, Pops was always talking about he didn't want no bastard kid coming down there. I'm just saying, he's been buried for quite some time, but he was very wicked with the tongue. He said he didn't want a bastard kid coming down there. His first grandkid. So mom was so hysterical because that's where my son actually passed away. Grandma was feeding him, and he came out 9'8" anyway. He came out 9 pounds 8, right? She was feeding him a bottle, and she said it seems like everything was good to go. She put him back in the pen. He started making this strange sound. She went back and picked him up, and she started rocking him, and then she thought he needed to be burped. But she was trying to burp him, burp him, burp him. And then when she put him back in front of him and was rocking him, he started turning blue. And she just felt like everything just dropped out. Like she got super scared. That was her great first grandson. And he started turning blue right there in her arms. So she went and put him in the crib. She called 911. And by the time 911 got over there, he turned pretty much blue. They came and brought him back into the very same kitchen where I grew up as a child. They put him on the table and tried to resuscitate him. And at that time, you know, mom was like, she felt like he was going to be able to come back. He just had too much to drink. That's what was up. He had too much milk to drink. But that wouldn't be the case. I got him checked up before he went down there, and he had a clean bill of health. Come to find out, somehow he had a heart tumor. A heart tumor that, as a big baby like that, was on the backside of one of his main arteries. And it's almost like it restricted his airflow. So it was nothing that they could do to give him more airflow at the time as a baby. They couldn't do anything that they would possibly do with an adult. So imagine, your mom, her first grandson, first grandkid, period, seeing him pass away right there in front of her in the home. So by the time I got down there, they had already taken him to the coroner. When I got to the coroner, okay, when I got to the coroner, right, I asked where my son was. I gave him the name. The guy said, just going through the routine. I said, hey, I need to see my son. He said, well, you're not gonna be able to see. He wasn't rude or anything. He said, you're not gonna be seeing him right now. I said, hey, it's not gonna be an option. I just got down here 12 hours, and I just want to see my first son. He's like, all right, brother, let me go get him. He brought him out, and this is, they've been playing over and over in my head where me and him used to kick it. I used to feed him. Being in the apartment, just had a bed and everything. How comfortable he used to look when he got a full ball of milk. He just used to look so happy. He just had a smile. But I also remember when he used to fall asleep. When they brought that gurney out, when they brought him out, it just looked like he was asleep like he did when we was at home. You know what I'm saying? It looked like he was just resting peacefully, man. I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, and I was like, man, I was talking to him. I could see where they had already start the I guess the process of what they do when a body come down there. And it just he didn't have no blue. He wasn't blue. I mean, his skin looked so smooth and looked like he was just there resting, having a nice little nap after he drunk his bottle. It just looked like he was there taking a nap, you know. I was just resting, like he was out there snoozing. And that comes in my thought process a lot. Because I look at it like it would have been good to have the time that I got now in retirement to pretty much spend with my kids at the age they were when I was deploying a lot. I'm gonna be honest. Back then, I just felt like this was all about the military duties that I'm supposed to do. But everything that you collect doing your service, when you are relieved and you finally get released in your retirement, it doesn't matter if you stay around base. Some people stay around base so they can be close to the military. Some people go to areas where it's not really a military base. But it's quite different than being around the military base. It is. It's quite different than active duty. You know, you're going to always see certain people around. But especially when you're collecting your combat deployment and, you know, everything that was going on over there with mortar rounds dropping, rockets, you know, uh, your comrades losing their life, you know, and donating blood. You know what I'm saying? Um, being a donor, helping out your fellow comrades. You don't know what's going to happen because it was so much going on in there to the point where you finally get home because while I was in combat, my pops passed away, but I had a chance to go over there at the end of my combat tour when they thought he was going to pass away because he had cancer. That's the first time I seen him in a minute, and it wasn't a good sight. But every time that I knew that I was going to come in contact, I always remembered what he told me on the phone about my son. I always remembered how he told me he dead and just got off the phone. I always remember, still to this day. I still hear it and I understand it. I mean, in all this clarity. But you know, I always look at he would have been my oldest son if he still would have been here. And then I have another son that's 32, but he would have been older than him. I had him when he was young. But the whole point I'm trying to make is, you know, you can lose a kid without being in the service. But for me, I'm speaking from a point where I was in the service, where I did see my kids grow up quick when I wasn't around. And I'm gonna tell you, it's worse than being a deadbeat father as a civilian, because a civilian can pop up every now and then, where a kid having a birthday party, whatever the case may be. They can pop up. In the military, you ain't popping up until you get back off deployment. And depending on what type of deployment you went on, you may not return the same way you left. And people think these garrison deployments are easy. They're not, especially when it deals with the Marine Corps. I'm not complaining. I was a hard charger when I was in there. I was a go getter. I was always, you know, being gung ho and stuff like that. And it went by in a blur. But at the end of the day, your family is going to suffer the most. That's why, if you ever hear military brat, that is the reason why your kids are so bad being in the military. Because either the mother or 95% of the time, the father is going to be away. And when you come back, your kid done picked up some bad habits. Some of the worst high schools you can go to is ones overseas and ones, you know, on base. Then the worst high schools you can go to is all them military kids. Seriously, that's the worst. And when you're overseas, them kids don't have nothing to do. So they try to form these little gangs, these little popular gangs back in the day, and recruit kids, and then your kids tell you, hey, can we just go over here? We're going with these kids right here, going over this. We're just gonna hang out. And it's not just hanging out. They start getting into trouble. And that's where they come military brats. I don't know too many people know, but when your kid get in trouble on the military installation is quite different. The family, the military, the service member, if they get caught stealing, if they get caught, um, messing up military property, depending on how it is, you have to pay restitution, and you have to get out there and perform community service with them. And when they go check in the hours, they go check in, and they go check out to go do the service, you have to be there. Anyway, back to the whole deal. Depression exists. Mental health in the Marine Corps, Navy, Army, Air Force, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's certain areas, but in the Marine Corps, it's a lot of things they don't give a crap about. And I can care less to anybody that's listening, that's a Marine, you want to come here and try to dispute it. It's the facts. There's a lot of things we could have did easier, but they want to prove a point that we was the hardest in there. And at that time, it was good competition. But when it come to your family, when it came to being told, hey, donate to this organization because they're going to help you out when you need it, and to get to that point early in my life and go ask them for some money to bury my son, and them lecturing me about being so young and all that, I was like, man, that left a bitter taste in my mouth. I ain't gonna lie. But you get out and you start thinking about your kids when they get older, and you say, damn, I really lost a lot of time. I lost so much time in the military. But then when you get out of the military, you lose even more time because of time gap that you had while you was active duty. Your kids grew up and they start thinking for themselves, and it's nothing you can do about it. You think it's easier just to communicate, and I'm not saying this is everybody, but you just think it's easy to communicate, and it's not. It's just not. You know what I'm saying? It's extremely difficult. And you would be amazed at these military brats that don't appreciate the benefits that they have to go to college, to have some type of stipend. It's wild, yo. I'm not complaining. God bless my sons. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you that, combine that with everything that I had to, what I'm saying, lace up and march forward without looking back. Being able to have family problems going on at home, but still show up to work like everything cool. Always trying to get high evaluations because they told you if your family life interfere with your work life, they'll tell you straight up that will affect your promotion. I'm telling you, it was crazy. It was crazy. And then, when you get ready to deploy, you have a pre-deployment. You have training, pre-op training. So that's time you got to take out. And then when that concludes, depending on how smooth it is, you have, some weeks left, and then you're shipping out. Sea bag, cargo netting in them 747, 749s and all that, smelling all that fuel. Or if you're over there going in the water to Korea, going over there on that ship, rocking back and forth, every damn near service member in there throwing up in the same bathroom. It was vicious. But once you get settled in, you call home and you want to talk to your kids, a lot of times they got 3 or 4 words for you. Especially when they start to grow up and they become preteens. But anyway, man, shout out to, to the hottest chat in the MFing game. I just want to let y'all know, something I don't even talk about, man. personal stuff like that. I don't. But that's how it is, man. You can. I don't regret anything I did with wearing that green camo for sure. But it would have been it would have been great to be able to have all my sons grown at this time. You know what I'm saying? Just not having such a gap where you have to go to the VA. You have to go through all these programs for PTSD. You have to answer all these questions, deal and communicate with people. Talk about certain things. Not everybody in the group may concur with you. It's some very extreme cases that's in that same group. Your case may not be as extreme as theirs. You in there with a bunch of grunts, O3 infantry. So everybody's situation, some people might be in that PTSD talking about, their unit, how their unit was attacked and bombed and hit an IED or whatever the case. I had people, I had Marines that I served with on the drill field that ended up passing in combat. Word travel fast. Being on the street for 3 years, and then you pretty much know, like, okay, hey, it's just word just try. Hey, man, what base? I saw you on the deployment list. What base you going to? And this, that, and there. When y'all move, when y'all shipping out, and all this other stuff, you see them over there, and we're talking about this can be from 6 months on up to a year plus. You run into them, you might never see them again because they have a mission to take care of. You feel me? So shout out to the fam, though. It's a lot about the Corps that's on my mind all the time, man. And that's definitely one of those processes that it's not even any answers that is going to heal it. It's just something you got to deal with. Definitely, you just got to deal with it now. Your kids are grown adults. You can't take back anything. You just got to make sure that you reach out. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully, the VA can get you the help. But anybody in the military, that go through this will tell you, don't be so engaging to let certain people in your circle know what's going on, because you're definitely not gonna get the type of reaction that you think. You're not. I don't care how in depth you explain it, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If you got depression going on, you got, PTSD, and you think about certain things, if you tell the right veteran, they're going to tell you, guess what? I do too. You know what I'm saying? They're going to tell you, hey, guess what? I do too. But I'm going to leave that right there. You know, um, he actually passed away in this month. So, but this is not the only time. I mean, I've been through this before. I've talked about it briefly, before, periodically. I think those of you that, been with combat for a minute. It's a Wednesday. I'm gonna transition up out of that. God bless. Salute, homie. Salute to my oldest. Salute to all my sons. You know what I'm saying? Um, Papa love you. You know, but it's fight week, and we'll chop it up another day, another time. Appreciate y'all for pulling up.